There was once a great civilization of people who taught and maybe even peopled civilizations such as Egypt, Samaria, and etc. First, let me make it clear on whether these people were Mongoloid or Negroid. I would like to point out the fact that when they artificially recreated one of the oldest skulls found in the Americas, she had Negroid features. You see, it says distinctly African features, which they meant Negroid, attributed to Lucia, were wrong. And they're only saying it's wrong because the story these days is that so-called black people wasn't in America until slavery. Why would the ancient Maya have a hieroglyph for a quote-unquote black king? Ekahau, names which translate the black chief or the king of the blacks. He was depicted in the figure of a ferocious blackamoor with the members of a man. Let's use this book to look at a few classifications of humans. The Asiatic or Mongolian race, of a deep yellow color, their hair black, stiff, straight, and rather thin. Heads almost square, wide mouths, high cheekbones, small flat noses, flat foreheads, and small eyes. This race comprises the Japanese, Chinese, Mongolians, the inhabitants of Siberia and Europe, Finns, Laplanders in Europe, and the Eskimo Indians in America. The American or Indian race, found only in America, is of a deep copper color, straight black hair, high cheekbones, eyes black and sunken, large faces, and robust bodies. This race comprises all the American Indians, except the Eskimo, who belong to the Asiatic race. To prove that America is Atlantis, we're going to be looking into this book right here. I know I went over this book before, but there's things in this book that I didn't go over. And I want you to note that this book is by a Rosicrucian, or Rosicrucian, however you pronounce it. But this is one of the societies who influenced Freemasonry. America, or Atlantis, and as the curtain, which has hitherto concealed the prehistoric connection between the peoples of ancient Egypt and of America. It will be seen that the people of the Eagle on the Nile being descended from the original people of the Eagle on this continent. The twain are one, and that prehistoric America was the original Egypt or Eagle Land prior to the mighty dispensation in the mighty days of Peleg, when the earth was divided and the great globe itself was nearly rent asunder. This the important part. America was evidently peopled from the old continent because there were only 8 persons saved at the deluge. The principal part of their posterity during the whole of the 1st century after that event occupied the very center of Asia. So this is basically telling you that the Autochthonous American didn't participate or wasn't involved in the deluge of the Bible. Now, let's move on to this book right here. It's by Ignatius Donnelly. What proofs have we that the Egyptians were a colony from Atlantis? They claimed descent from the 12 great gods, which must have meant the 12 gods of Atlantis, to wit, Poseidon and Cleto and their 10 sons. 12, just like the 12 tribes of Israel? Interesting. Moving on. According to the traditions of the Phoenicians, the Egyptians derived their civilization from the Atlanteans. And as the Egyptians far antedated the rise of the Phoenician nations proper, this must have meant that Egypt derived its civilization from the same country to which the Phoenicians owed their own origin. The Phoenician legends show that Mizor, from whom the Egyptians were descended, was a child of the Phoenician gods Imanus and Magus. Mizor gave birth to Tot, the god of letters, the inventor of the alphabet. St. Coniaton tells us that Kronos, king of Atlantis, visited the south and gave all Egypt to the god Tot, that it might be his kingdom. Mizor is probably the king Mestor, named by Plato. According to the Bible, the Egyptians were descendants of Ham, who was one of the 3 sons of Noah who escaped from the deluge, to wit, the destruction of Atlantis. The great similarity between the Egyptian civilization and that of the American nations. The fact that the Egyptians claimed to be red men. The religion of Egypt was preeminently sun worship, and Ra was the sun god of Egypt. Rama was the sun god of the Hindus, Rana, a god of the Toltecs, Remi, the great festival of the sun of the Peruvians, and Rayam, a god of Yemen. The presence of pyramids in Egypt and America. The Egyptians were the only people of antiquity who were well informed as to the history of Atlantis. The Egyptians were never a maritime people, and the Atlanteans must have brought that knowledge to them. They were not likely to send ships to Atlantis. We find another proof of the descent of the Egyptians from Atlantis in their belief as to the underworld. This land of the dead was situated in the west, hence the tombs were all placed, whenever possible, on the west bank of the Nile. The soul of the dead man was supposed to journey to the underworld by a water progress. His destination was the Elysian Fields, where mighty corn grew. Corn originated only in the Americas. Africa, like Europe and America, evidences a commingling of different stocks. The blacks are not all black, nor all woolly haired. The Africans pass through all shades, from that of the light Berber, no darker than a Spaniard, to the deep black of the Alofos, between Senegal and Gambia. The traces of red man or copper-colored races are found in many parts of the continent. Pritchard divides the true Negroes into 4 classes. Other tribes have forms and features like the European. Their complexion is black, or a deep olive, or a copper color approaching to black, while their hair, though often crisp and frizzled, is not in the least woolly. So they're saying that there's black races out there with European-like features. The complexion and hair of the Abyssinians, which is Ethiopia, vary very much, their complexion ranging from almost white to dark brown or black. Some of the Nubians are copper-colored or black with a tinge of red. Now, let's use historical evidence to see if so-called Black Americans are Israelites or in the Bible at all. The Jews are descended from Adam, the Gentiles from pre-Adamites. The Gentiles were created aborigines in the beginning by the word of God in all lands. Adam, the father of the Jews, was formed of clay by the hand of God. Genesis, after the first chapter, is a history not of the first man, but of the first Jews. The deluge of Noah was not universal, and it destroyed only the Jews, nor is it possible to trace to Noah the origins of all the races of men. Now, fortunately, we are able to indicate with considerable certainty the regions occupied by the 3 families of Noachites. The Hamites are known to have distributed themselves through the north of Africa, the Nile Valley, and the east of the continent as far as the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. They passed from Asia Minor into the southeast of Europe as early as 2500 BC and occupied the peninsula of Greece under the name of Pelasgians. To this family belonged the Etruscans. The Phoenicians were probably Hamites instead of Semites. This conclusion that the black races are pre-Adamic is opposed, so far as I know, only on the 3 following grounds. 1. Because the Negroes are supposed to be the descendants of Ham. This has been the traditional opinion of the church and hence of mankind at large. But because the church and mankind in general have so long held the opinion, cautious conservatism is reluctant to let go its hold. Now I'm going to use this book to show you who was being classified as Semitic in the 1800s. The principal races which he includes under the Caucasian head are the Germanic, Celtic, Semitic, and Hindu. The latter differ much in color, some being black and others fair, comprising all intermediate shades, and are probably a mixture of different primitive stocks. My point of all my videos is to remind you who you are, that your history is much greater and much older than the Bible that they're trying to limit you to.